Ndu's life took a new turn as he married and started a family. God blessed him with 3 children, 2 daughters, Amaka and Chidinma, who grew up to be virtuous, and a son, Chukudi, who was the pride of the family. Ndu often told his family about their family history, but had never told them about one. With the way he behaved, one could tell that he had forgotten that history, the tragedies and the promise made to God. Amaka, the eldest daughter, was married with 2 children and living happily with her husband, but she never forgot the family gathering every month. Ndu always gathered his family every month to spend time with them. You won't blame him, he had seen a lot for a lifetime. Chidinma, on the other hand, just got married to a dedicated child of God, and she had started experiencing family life. Chukudi, the pride of the family and last-born, was always pampered by their mother, always reminding him how he is going to continue the family's lineage, so the mother had to make sure he finds a suitable wife for himself. Though Chukudi would always listen with respect but harbored his own dreams. He was a young man full of life and ambition, ready to start a family of his own. When he introduced his fiancée to his father, the family celebrated joyously. But their celebration was short-lived. One Sunday, during the family's occasional gathering for the month, as the celebration was taking another level, the parish priest, Father Emmanuel, walked into the house. The priest had known Ndu's family for years. When he was still at the seminary, was one of young priests when they rescued Ndu and other villagers, before he became a priest. When the priest walked in, the family, though surprised, but welcomed him with joy. Ndu's wife spoke up, "Oh, Father Emmanuel, you came at the right time." Ndu was one of the richest in the land. He was a palm wine tapper and also set strap for grass cutter. He is very good at what he does, and the villagers liked his meat and wine so much. Father Emmanuel replied, "Thank you so much, maybe next time I will join you, but I have come to a message from God to this family." They were surprised. Then Father Emmanuel handed a letter to Ndu and said, "I thought you should go through this. I will come by next week to know about what you think about it." The priest, Ndu, kept the letter at that moment as their celebration was ongoing, but he was disturbed greatly that he couldn't bear it, that he left for his room to check what was in letter. To his greatest surprise, it was the vow he had made many years ago, and the church had archived it. He wasn't sure the church would still remember, and he wasn't ready to fulfill it either. Ndu was soaked in depression and don't know what to do. How will his family's name be closed down on my watch? He thought. His wife was very worried and asked him about it, but he wouldn't say a word to anybody, nor will he meet the priest for clarity. After 1 week, Father Emmanuel came back to the house, but Ndu was at the backyard getting things ready for his evening market. Chukudi called his father. Ndu greeted the priest when he came in and sat down as the priest continued. "Ndu," the priest said gently, "do you remember the promise you made to God?" Ndu was silent and couldn't talk. Obviously he must be thinking of something to say. The priest repeated the question for the second time and said, "You vowed that one of your sons would serve him as a priest." Ndu's face darkened. He had not forgotten the vow, but the thought of dedicating Chukudi to the priesthood weighed heavily on him. It meant the end of his family lineage, the very thing he had prayed to preserve. Ndu replied, "Father Emmanuel, you will hear from me. Please give me time to think." Of course, in all indication, Ndu was not ready to redeem his vow, because it would still mean the end of his lineage, which was the actual reason why he made the vow. "Father," Ndu began hesitantly, "I made that vow out of desperation. I never imagined I would be left alone to carry on the family name. Dedicating Chikudi to the priesthood would mean no sons to continue our lineage. Is there no other way to honor God's faithfulness? Father Emmanuel looked at Ndu with understanding but reminded him of the sacredness of a vow. God has been faithful to you, Ndu. He preserved you through all the trials. He made you bounce back like a man. It is not for us to renegotiate a vow made in sincerity. Ndu wrestled with the priest's words. As time went on, the tension in the household grew. Chikudi, unaware of the depth of his father's dilemma, nor the rest of the family. One morning Ediku asked her husband after morning prayer, "My husband, for the past 3 weeks now, the priests have been coming to our house, and I always notice your regular depression. You haven't spoken to me about it. I hope you're fine." Ndu was not in the mood to talk. He does not know what to do or think. He will always dismiss his wife with, "I'm hungry, go get me food to eat." Ndu harbored lots of thought in him, if he would send his son out of the village, or even force him to be with a woman in order to disqualify his priesthood. But amidst all of this, Chikudi noticed the growing strain. One evening, he confronted Ndu. "Father, what troubles you? You haven't been the hero I have always known." Chikudi asked. Ndu sighed deeply, took a deep breath and said to him, "Send message to your sisters, I want to speak with everybody." Chikudi was surprised to hear his father talk like that, so he hurried and called the other siblings. When they all arrived, Ndu greeted them all and recounted the story of the vow he had made years ago. There was once a beautiful village called Udo. Udo was known far and wide as a land flowing with milk and honey. Udo was a place of abundance, joy, and unity. Its people thrived on the bounty of their land, living peacefully with one another. The villagers credited their prosperity to the blessings of Chaku, the supreme deity, and held annual festivals to give thanks. Among the villagers was Motsi Ikin, your grandfather, a humble farmer who lived with his wife, Ediku, and their 5 children. Their home was filled with laughter, love, and gratitude. Motsi Ikin was a hard-working man, known for his honesty and generosity. Ediku, a woman of wisdom and grace, taught their children the virtues of faith, kindness, and resilience. One fateful day, a dark cloud loomed over Udo. It began with a fierce storm that ravaged the village, destroying crops and homes. Soon after, a mysterious illness swept through, claiming the lives of many, including Motsi Ikin and Ediku. The once thriving village was plunged into despair, and their children, Ndu, Amara, Obina, Ngozi, and the youngest, Ifani, were left orphaned. Grief-stricken but determined, the 5 siblings vowed to honor their parents by staying together and rebuilding their lives. They moved into a small hut on the edge of the village and began to farm the little land they had left. Chibuzo, the eldest at 18, took on the role of the head of the family, while Amoka, 16, became the caregiver. Despite our efforts, life in Udo grew increasingly difficult. The soil, once fertile, now yielded little. Villagers who once lent a helping hand were now struggling to survive themselves. Hunger and desperation began to take hold. One day, I approached the village elders to seek help. "Our parents gave their all to this community," he pleaded. "Can you not spare something for us?" The elders, burdened by their own woes, turned him away. "We have nothing to give," they said. Discouraged but not defeated, my siblings and I tried other means to survive. Amaka began weaving baskets to sell in the market, Obina helped fishermen by the river, Ngozi and Ifoni gathered firewood to trade. However, no matter how hard they worked, their efforts were met with misfortune. Crops failed, customers dwindled, and the villagers became wary of sharing what little they had. As the smoke and debris settled from the misfortune in the village, 2 of my siblings, Obina and Ngozi, succumbed to their misfortune. The remaining 3 siblings, myself, the eldest, my quiet yet courageous brother Chibuzo, and my sister Amoka, clung to one another. One fateful night, as I sat outside the ruins of our home, gazing at the stars, I whispered a heartfelt prayer. Almighty God, if you preserve even one of us to carry on the family name, I vow to dedicate one of our sons to your service as a priest. Let your will be done. The days turned into weeks, and the siblings struggled to rebuild their lives. We were visited by the priest in the neighboring village, Ishama, which is our present habitation right now. They came with a lot of things, foodstuffs, clothes, and many things. They told us that they were sent by God to help us, and so they asked us to follow them to Ishama. Many people from the village followed them, myself inclusive, and that was how we started living here. He coughed. Just when we thought all was over, I had to make my vows again to the church and even ask the church for documentation, because I was very happy seeing that myself and my 2 siblings made it. But the worst happened. Tragedy struck again as Chibuzo, who had been the youngest of we 3, fell gravely ill and passed away. Amara, though strong, took on the role of comforting me. But the burden of grief weighed heavily on her little frame, and she too succumbed to an unshakable fever. I was left alone, the last surviving member of his once vibrant family. His vow to God lingered in his heart, a promise tied to the survival of his lineage. Chikudi was stunned. You mean you promised to dedicate me to the priesthood? Yes, my son, Ndu replied, his voice heavy with emotion. I never knew I would have been the only surviving son, neither do I know you would be my only son, but now, I wonder if there is another way to fulfill my vow without sacrificing the family's lineage. Chikudi fell silent, grappling with the weight of the revelation. The children and their mother, though sober, praised their father for his bravery in securing the family lineage. The meeting ended in tears. Chikudi still can't believe his ears. What is he going to tell his fiancée? How will she feel? What of his own feelings? So many thoughts ran through his mind. For 2 weeks he was never himself, and his mother was always by him to console him. His father spoke up one day, my son, I can't detect your life for you, you just have to make the decision yourself. Chikudi couldn't hold it. He stood up and hugged his father and promised to do accord to the family's best interest. Ndu and Chikudi decided to seek God's guidance together. They fasted and prayed, asking for clarity and a sign from God. Ndu came across a passage in the Gospel from Ecclesiastes 5 verses 4 to 5. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. The words struck Ndu like a thunderbolt. Tears streamed down his face as he realized there was no escaping his promise. He turned to Chikudi and said, My son, we must honor the vow. If God has called you to this path, He will make a way. Though hesitant, Chikudi agreed, trusting that God's plans were greater than his own. He quickly let her fiancé know about it, though was hard on her, but she understood it was the betterment of their family. The parish celebrated his decision with a special mass, and Chikudi began his journey to the seminary. Months later, as Chikudi immersed himself in his training, news came to Ndu's household that his daughters, Amoka and Chidinma, had both given birth to healthy baby boys, and they were calling Ndu, meaning life, just as their grandfather. Ndu's joy knew no bounds. The parish priest visited him and said, "Do you see now, Ndu? God is faithful. He has not only fulfilled your vow but also ensured your family's lineage through your grandsons." Years later, Chikudi was ordained as a priest, serving his community with dedication and love. His ministry brought countless people to God, and his faithfulness became a source of inspiration for the entire village. Ndu, now an old man, often sat surrounded by his grandchildren, telling them stories of faith, perseverance, and the importance of keeping one's promises to God. His vow, though difficult, had brought blessings beyond measure. Through it all, Ndu learned a profound truth: God's plans are always higher than our own, and His faithfulness never wavers. And it's very important we know that vows are sacred promises made before God and others. They carry significant weight because they reflect our integrity and commitment to honor our words. The Bible emphasizes the importance of fulfilling vows, reminding us that they should not be made lightly. In Ecclesiastes 5 verse 4-5, we are warned, "When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow." It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. This verse highlights that God values truth and integrity in our promises, and breaking a vow is seen as foolishness before Him. Similarly, Numbers 30 verse 2 declares, "If a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word, he shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth." This underscores the seriousness of our commitments, especially those made in God's name. Life circumstances can make fulfilling vows challenging, but God calls us to honor our word even when it is inconvenient. Psalm 15 verse 4 praises the person who keeps an oath even when it hurts, and does not change their mind. This reflects true faithfulness and reliance on God's strength to uphold our promises. Breaking a vow not only affects our relationship with others but also our relationship with God. Keeping our vows demonstrates trust in God's faithfulness and reflects His character in us. When faced with difficulties, we can lean on Philippians 4 verse 13, which reminds us, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." In conclusion, vows should be made with sincerity and kept with determination, for they honor both God and our integrity. Always seek God's wisdom before making a vow and rely on His grace to fulfill it.